I'm here to.
That's amazing. So the topic of today's discussion is going to be centered around AI agents. And I think this word is thrown around probably as much as LLMs and AI at this point. And so I wanted to get started by level setting as to what an AI agent means for Hamed. So do you mind describing to us what an AI agent is?
Absolutely. So that's in the research community or application domain. There are variety of definition, but one thing that I perceive as an AI agent is the way that a code or entity works for a task, right? So in order to achieve a task, you have to take actions. And that's through dealing with an environment, right? As an agent or a code, let's put it into an example. So I'll say Michelle pointed to writing a letter, right? So that's a task that I'm given. For a non-agentic, that's a term coined by Andrew Ng, you would basically ask the LLM, hey, write a letter for me, right? So, and if you give a prompt, it writes a letter, and that's it, right? So you accept it. But in an agent, AI agent workflow, so what you would basically do is not only giving that, saying, hey, I want a letter, but I want it in the context of business, right? So that's one. But then you iterate it. You'll say, hey, if in this context I want to do any research, or if I want to incorporate some context, can you do that for me? So you do another iteration. It's basically like a feedback, right? So in broader sense, AI agents can be defined as this agent that or system that works based on the input through the environment, perceive it, and basically based on the final decision, it takes actions, right? So
Got it.
yeah.
I think like for all the technically minded people here, it's something like a for loop is what you're describing, where you take an LLM call and you keep making the call until you're fine with the output of what that agent's conceived, and that's the reasoning component that you're solving for the agent, and then there's the action component
Yes.
where you actually execute on the request. Is that correct?
Correct. So in a sense, you're basically having a feedback,
Right.
right? So in a feedback system, you get your feedbacks through different elements, right? In the context of Arthur making borscht, right? So you ask the chef, hey, I want borscht, right? And in a sense, you know what the action should look like, right? And the environment, basically, you have the ingredients, but then you make it, right? Then a well-experienced chef might say, well, it's a little bit salty. Well, I'm not sure if salt is, or maybe the bits are not well done, right? So then, from that perspective, you have to take actions, right? But many times, this would be something as a feedback, right, to improve it
Right.
till you get the right outcome.
Got it.
Yeah.
So if we're taking this definition of AI agents, what technical challenges do you think we're going to face to advance them? And are we even facing any technical challenges?
So currently there are. So this is an evolving field and area, for sure, in terms of research and application. But I would say broadly, so there are couples, right? So from software and architecture perspective, from application as well, also how well you can seamlessly integrate these to daily routine operating systems, right? Or operations in general. Um, an example would be, for example, how well you can um, oversee that an agent can improve these tasks, right? So that itself could be done by an agent. Fast token, for example, is an area that currently we're giving these speeds at the level for human, right? So you prompt, you get something feedback, but typically when you're designing for future, right? In the future, you're not relying only on humans doing all these tasks seamlessly. So that means you require to have faster tokens to speed up the whole process, right? So you don't want to give a task that typically takes a long time. So from architecture, infrastructure, and also the innovations. So I think there is a lot of room that can be still done to improve these processes. So that's something that I can point out.
Got it. Yeah, I think there's some controversy surrounding, where the innovation's actually needed, because, when we talk about the architecture, we talked about how it's just looping multiple LLM calls, and it's essentially a feedback loop over it, right? And that's a system architecture, and you're using the core IP of OpenAI or Llama and all these guys for the reasoning. And so, moving forward, do you think there's more innovation needed at the foundational model that's going to resolve all the issues that we see with agents right now, like latency, infinite reasoning loops? Or do you think there's going to be some, breakthroughs that we need to achieve with the system architecture in and of itself?
That's a very great question. So I would say part of it is that in terms of innovation, already some of these are happening. For example, there is this human evaluation for code writing benchmark, right? That basically you could use a GPT-4 or GPT-3 to evaluate the performance, right? So when you use an AI agent, you can actually, through multiple reasoning or a chain of reasoning, through multi-agent environment, you can basically achieve a better performance than a GPT-4, for example. So a lot of innovation could actually contribute to how you can really overcome some of those challenges or mitigate at least, given the tools that's been already out there. But of course, there are many more on the, as you said, architecture itself, but rather, how those can turn to even more innovative or opening up some opportunities for new innovations, for example. That's and then the other area that I would say that could be in the future or even happening now is using multimodal agents.
Right.
So I'm not sure if you've seen this announcement by some big tech companies dealing with all these multimodals, that these agents not only work on the LLM but also taking care of other contexts, and at the same time building on the reasoning part, not only from the contextual or NLP, but also computer.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really great insight, because I think most of the startups that we see pitch to us, they're using out-of-the-box tooling, and the architecture looks exactly similar to startup A, B, C, D, E, and F. And if we have more founders that are also innovating on the architectural component, I think that's a meaningful way to achieve a differentiation and moat from all the competitors out there. I think it's less explored, but I'm glad there's research already underway on that front.
Yes.
And now I want to transition more to the use case and the commercial side. because we're trying to make some money here. And technology is great, but ultimately we want it to serve a meaningful use case, right? And I just wanted to get your insights on what you think is going to be a great application for agents in the future, either in the near term or in the far term or even in the present.
I think one of the applications currently that happening, and we've seen it, is basically customer service. So a lot of that goes through chatbots, right? That's currently is being deployed and being used and being constantly improved on. The other areas that could potentially be on the horizon short term is that marketing. And the reason I'm saying this is that ideally for an industry to take on these AI agents, you have to know what risk you're dealing with, right? To minimize that. Then also in terms of other issues like ethical, right? Within the context of, let's say, healthcare or societal impacts, right? So you want to make sure that the impacts are minimized. So maybe some of those issues would be more on the long term, but the fastest are customer services, marketing, and manufacturing, media content generation. Among those are pretty popular even now,
Right.
and happening as
Right.
we speak.
Yeah, I think like what we're seeing in the market is, the reasoning engine has a threshold for how well it can reason right now, right? And, as it turns out, beyond a certain IQ level, it doesn't function well. Like you wouldn't want an AI-based doctor or an AI lawyer right now. And so in the near case, sort of we're seeing robotic process automation as a huge market where, you have all this work in everyone's job, right, that no one wants to do. And it's repetitive, it's boring, it, drains the creativity out of the person. And we're seeing, these NLP models paired with computer vision and symbolic AI and all these different things essentially take that boring work out of people's jobs so that they can focus on what they're actually
Creating.
being good at, which is human,
Yes,
right?
indeed.
Do you think like after we develop, maybe GPT-6 comes out, 7 comes out, do you think there is a possibility that we may one day have an AI doctor or an AI, like a law firm that's entirely autonomous and run by AI agents?
So that's a hot topic, but I would say generally AI agents wouldn't take the jobs,
Right,
but rather, as you mentioned, they're more taking over the laboring part, right?
right,
And I mean, it doesn't seem far, but given overcoming some of those issues that we spoke of, right?
yeah,
For example, in the law, I'm not in the law or
right,
having the background, but I would assume that you would deal with a lot of you know issues in terms of, let's say, is it fair,
yeah, yeah,
right? So I guess in the long run there could be, but at the end of the day, you would like to use it as as a way to mitigate and taking over those
right,
time-consuming tasks,
right.
right?
Thank you for all the insights.
Of course.
I think, we all value your time, so
Thank
thank
you
you so
very
much
much.
for coming
Thank
out
you so
today.
much. We have time for one question, if anybody, I think, yeah. Thank you for that, it's great, everything else today. I guess it's a little bit broad, but I feel that obviously LLM technology in the real technical sense is growing, and lots of firms are doing great work. We're all using RAG and techniques like that to bring data in. Part of me feels, one of my theses, that reasoning power of LLMs is pretty good right now. It's not perfect, it's obviously not a database, it's a very different technology. But the RAG around it, I think we can do a lot of work there. And we're all sort of doing the same, unless I'm missing the boat, but we're all sort of doing the same thing. Semantic search, a bit of Postgres, Pinecone and so on, and other techniques. But are there any great technical advances there that we should be thinking about that maybe aren't being done in startup land so much, or in academia and so on. That's not just for you, so I guess other people here may have ideas on that as well. And so basically, getting better data into the reasoning engine is what I'm talking about.
It's
I could take that maybe, and then maybe if you have additional thoughts, you can follow up. I think the biggest thing with RAG is that it's so early. I think everyone understands the end outcome that you want to achieve, which is how do you get the model to act on your private data and sort of reason based on that. But the issue with that is that there's really no benchmark to say that RAG architecture number 1 is better than RAG architecture number 2. So I think there's some benchmarking to really understand whether we're even achieving any performance difference with this RAG stuff, right? Because there's so many other companies that are sitting at the application layer that are more black boxes, but they're doing the same thing. They let you upload your documents, unstructured, structured, and they deliver an output which is a chat-based interface instead of a modular architecture that the developer has to deal with. So what is to say that that black box is inferior to what this RAG guy is selling? There's no benchmark, there's no performance indicator for that, right? So I think that's the first key issue that's going to be solved by academia. We have all these benchmarks for LLMs already, and I think the next step is how do you apply that to RAG and the end outcome that you want to achieve? And I think like the other thing that I'd say is that data is the oil in the AI stack. And I think that even though VCs say that a lot, founders know that, we see a lot of founders still underestimating the power of structuring your data in the right format for ingestion by the LLM. I think that RAG is really trying to say that, just give us the data and we'll spit out this perfect output by somehow tweaking parameters. And you're leaving that up to fate, basically. And you're leaving that up to some developer who's trying to wrangle your data and figure out why this output is matched to this input. But I think like if you go through this effort and the investment of investing in your data pipeline, I think that you can actually achieve better results in any way. So I think those are like two key points that I want to mention for that.
Yeah, I think also like in terms of using RAG, I think a lot well put by Hardik. But one of the key points also is that we would like to mitigate that hallucination, right? And not only just make it closer to the factual context that we've been having based on the resources, right? But also mitigating these issues. It's at the core of it, right? And I think that's the room for growth, and it's still something that a universal, as you mentioned, metric for assessing these. So I do see there is a potential there that could be addressed. And again, these are at the forefront of the research and applications nowadays.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen.